Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Snapshot episode 75. I'm Brendan Patrick, joined always by Marvel Snap phenom Cam Best. Cam, I feel a bit rusty with the intro. It's been an entire week.
You say joined always, right? Like, not last week. Can I tell them what happened?
Yeah. It's the first time in 3 years, by the way. First time in 3 years.
Yeah, but Brendan famously has never been sick. He doesn't get sick. It's not a thing that happens to him. He's been complaining about what a normal person might call being sick and what he would call just some bad allergies.
Weak thoughts.
For like a month. And I was like, man, you know, it sounds like you're sick. Go to the doctor. He goes to the doctor. He's had the flu for an extended period of time.
That's a scion. I probably had the flu for about a week. I was scion of health. That's usually what they call me.
It turns out when you're constantly complaining about feeling sick, there is a possibility you are actually sick, as unlikely as it may seem.
Yeah, I was. All right. If we actually go down the timeline, so what probably happened is I do have allergies. I've become an allergic person to the world. And allergies are really bad right now. Apparently, it's like some outlier of a season. I went to my doctor. They gave me allergy medication. And, it all should have been good. And probably during that allergy time, I had a chest infection that didn't really go away.
Also not being sick.
Yep, not sick. You could say part of it, small amount, you could make the case, is my fault because I just didn't take any rest days. I was constantly in the gym, out running in the 110 degree heat. But nevertheless, anyway, I was kind of getting better. I was sick and I was good, and I was sick and I was good. And I was like, it's just okay. I'll get on the allergy medication. Y'all win. I wake up on Sunday to record the Snapshot. I'm like, whew, what the fuck is that? I felt like I got hit by a truck. I just went to the doctor. Said you got the flu. I obviously picked it up in Atlanta. The crazy thing is it incubated for about an entire week, which I wouldn't believe was possible, and my doctor wouldn't believe was possible. But all the other people that I infected, also, a whole entire week of no symptoms. And I've had 2 people around me get the flu now. If your significant others or your friends, if they get the flu after you get the flu, they can take something called Tamiflu, which you have to take in the first 48 hours. If you do that, you can actually get rid of the virus. And that's the only way. Other than that, you got to ride it out. I ended up taking steroids, maxed out my PR on bench. I took oral steroids.
Yeah, 315, baby.
Hell yeah, baby.
Get up to mid.
Get up to mid. Yeah, so steroids they make you feel better, period. But they're not good for you. They suppress your immune system. You think about once a year, and that's the max. So I feel better now. Maybe still got a bit of a lingering stuff, but first time missing a podcast in 3 years, and I'm sad.
Do you need do we do a little therapy session? You need to let it all out?
I don't know. I prided myself in not doing that. I prided myself in not doing that because I figured that there would never be a situation where I truly could not do it. And, we could have done it, but I think the quality would have suffered on that day. On that day.
It would have been a lot of me yapping, which is totally abnormal. That's just not a thing that happens normally, right? Like, that's... I
could have done it Monday, I think, if our schedules lined up more, but we had, the double whammy of Sunday was definitely a no-go, and then Monday, we basically had no time.
Yeah. I had stuff basically all day Monday, and it was like... I messaged him, I was like, I'll be free after 6, and he was like, brother, I'm dying.
I just told him, I was like, I'm going to deteriorate throughout the day. So we need to do this fast. So a little bit of Snapshot lore for those listening is Cam came to me about a month ago, and he goes, hey, man, can we please just stick to the Sunday? Monday's really hard for me, and, it kind of just messes up my schedule. I said, yeah, man, of course. I think in that month, we hit 3 out of 4 Monday episodes.
It's so insane. We're so bad at this.
But it actually wasn't incompetence. It was like I was traveling, or we scheduled on Monday with notice. But it was just kind of ridiculous. So, yeah. Anyway, how's your week in Marvel Snap been?
Well, it's Twitch drops, which means I can indulge the worst part of my persona, which is like, oh, I lost some ranks. Better be tilted for 10 hours about it. I'm really trying to I think after having that experience, I want to try to work on my own humility and accept, my skill is not equivalent to a rank and all of that. But yeah, to be honest with you, I've heard that like July through August is like, or June, July, August, like a pretty slow time for content and card games historically.
Interesting.
And like in terms of viewership, I've certainly seen that, at least on YouTube. Maybe I've just hit my peak, you know, like maybe I've peaked and I've gone that. So I've been trying to stream more.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems like I think a lot of people are going to hear this and be like, oh, it's because Marvel Snap is dying. And, you know, we got to talk about the roadmap for that.
Yeah.
I haven't really noticed like a marked decrease in stuff. I'd say I'm about down 20% views from my peak on YouTube. Twitch is honestly, it feels roughly the same. Maybe like less subscribers, but the viewers are roughly like the same as I would expect. And yeah. And that's with me streaming like maybe the worst possible times of all time, because every time there's an NBA game, I'm like, okay, I'll stream after the NBA game, which means like that, like the people who would regularly watch me at 6 are now no longer doing that. Anyway, this is a long way of saying I've been stressing myself out a lot, and I'm going to try to stress myself out a little bit less.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've never heard about the monthly thing in regards to these months. I mean, in other games, usually they release large sets, you know, every 3 months, so you will see that cyclical nature. And I've seen it in Flesh and Blood in particular, because Flesh and Blood is a game that got very popular and went through a significant cooling off period. Maybe picked up a little bit, but really never got back to where it was, which it just happens, you know, something is new, it's exciting. And especially when you get to that 2-3 year mark, you really kind of settle in, and I don't know, it takes a while before you hit those very consistent numbers, like with like an entrenched player base. Marvel Snap is interesting though, because it is a very much a mobile game, so there's just such a casual audience there, one that we don't really hear from very often, but we know exists. Like, there is a large audience propping up this game, playing this game every day, and playing it, believe it or not, for fun. Crazy enough, actually playing it for fun. So I'm not sure if Marvel Snap itself is declining overall, but I mean, when I look at Marvel Snap on Twitch, during Twitch drops specifically, I mean, it looks pretty healthy. I mean, you see big Marvel Snap streamers have 5,000 viewers, sometimes 10,000. I think that's crazy for what feels like to me sometimes a very niche mobile game.
It's healthy at the top end. I think one of the worst things about Twitch drops is it's very, very diminishing returns. So the first person in the category, it'll be very good for them. And some of the bigger streamers, I don't know this because I'm not in that club, but it certainly looks to me as though some of the bigger streamers like rotate shifts with each other in order to better occupy the first slot in the category, which is smart business, but it also does mean that it's a little bit harder for like other people to pick that up. And the sort of uneven distribution of Twitch drop viewership is an unsolvable problem of Twitch drops, right? Like, people who don't really watch are just going to go and click the first guy in the category, right?
Yep.
So for me, it's like I'm big enough where it's like a mild boost, but not like a boost that I have to like absolutely lose my mind chasing, right? So it's helpful. And obviously, you know, first of all, I do want to say, because this came up in my chat, I'm getting a little ADHD brain here. Shout out to the Pride variants. Someone came into my chat and was like, I can't believe these variants are woke. And to people like that, I just feel like I should stake my position out. Eat shit. I got my first real gaming device thanks to my 2 gay uncles. I won my first Magic tournament with tech that was given to me by a non-binary trans person. I have like sort of evolved into being a streamer due to a different trans person. Like, I would not be here. I would not be providing the content that you're watching were it not for the LGBTQ community. And I am intensely grateful to them and the people that helped me, and intensely opposed to people who, you know, oh, it's a Pride variant, it's woke. Shut up, man. That's my take. I'm like, it does sort of bother me, and I wanted to like find a place, like one of my spaces to like stake that out and make my position clear on that.
Yeah.
Because that's just, don't be an asshole. Very simple. I would not be here. There are a million different points at which I was helped by members of the LGBTQ plus community. And I literally would not be the person I am today were it not for that.
I think that nowadays as well, it does feel like that is a very, very vocal minority as well, like extreme minority. Or maybe in the past that wasn't the case, but it does feel like, I mean, you exist in Twitch chat, right? So that is that's a subset of a subset of a subset of a group of people sometimes when it comes to commenting there. But I do think overall, like, people see those, whether it's avatars, whether it's an event or something like that, as something that's positive for the community. Also, I thought those avatars just look fire.
They were just really good looking, yes. Like, they're just really good variants.
Yeah. Where was I? There was one thing I want to touch on, which was you talked about humility.
Wait, can I just say something?
Yep.
Your bicep vein looks amazing right now. Vascular as shit. It's a great pose for you.
Vein right
You're doing good. You're doing good.
Might have to get that thing fixed one day.
Yeah.
Nah, honestly, the biggest flex is when you have everybody has stretch marks here, but
of course,
now I have them right here, which is crazy. On my shoulder pads. I'm telling you, you give me one more year of the snapshot, I'm turning sideways to get through doors.
I'm going the other way. I'm just getting fat now. I'm on a journey to become the gamer I always wanted to be. No. Very overweight.
No. Anyway, you mentioned humility, which is funny because humility goes both ways actually, and it doesn't get enough appreciation, I think. So when you talk about humility, often we're talking about, like, the traditional sense is humility in victory, right? That is so often what people lack, and often when you talk about someone needing humility, that's where they need it. Is they don't have humility in victory, and it all goes to their head. But you also need to have humility in a loss, because the reason is like if you take level 1, which is to be humble in victory, it means your wins do not define you. And a lot of us would probably agree with that, and that's a good way to operate. Your wins do not define you, but if your wins don't define you, your losses also do not. And I think it's often overlooked, that aspect, but I think they're equally important, and something I like to tell to people, especially in card games, because in card games, obviously we've talked about the psychology of it, and we play it for the variance aspect, we play it for the swings, and it's not always going to go your way. But yet we sometimes attach our ego and our persona to these numbers that they ultimately do not define us.
Speaking of things in card games, hold on.
That was a sneeze.
Speaking of sneezing,
yeah.
So speaking of things in card games that I don't get, right? Mm-hmm. I am not someone who cares at all about cosmetics, really. I have all my cards at purple because I think that's like a cool color.
Yeah.
And I want my borders to match when I post a deck. And so for that reason, when like borders came out, it was just like, I can't get any of these, because if I get one of them, I have to get all of them, and that would require like $3,500, and I'm just not. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous thing. And so typically when like cosmetic things happen and people are mad about cosmetic shit in the community, I'm just like, well, I don't really care. But for this one, when they announced that they ran into technical bugs with Mastery, and we're going to talk about a couple things on the roadmap, I assume.
Yeah.
But for this one, I like went to talk with Alex Kocha. I went to talk with a couple other creators to like really get an understanding of what it was people expected and what was delivered. And it turns out, and this seems insane to me, but it's true, people were buying variants for their favorite characters under the expectation they would be rewarded for owning them when Mastery released.
Mm-hmm.
And to have a system like that in development and run into an error, I think is fine. I think it is totally fine to have an error and like be like, our bad, we messed up, we're going to have to delay this a lot, right? What I don't think is appropriate is approaching it with a flippant tone, because that is a purchase they have made with the expectation of future results, right? And the way it was announced was like, sorry, we ran into some bugs, now we're scrapping it, #game dev. And it's like, that feels like a tonal whiff from me.
That reminds me of, although in a different vein, at some point in Flesh and Blood's development, it obviously started as a small indie studio, but after it outgrew that level drastically, and we're talking $75 million in revenue drastically, they were still kind of leaning into that as a way to, oh, we're small indie dev. You know, it happens, right? Well, it is often understandable. There was one Reddit post that I saw, and I don't read Reddit, so I saw like a screenshot of a Reddit post on Twitter, where there's some people who are very angry about this development roadmap, and I'll read it out.
Whoa, hold on.
Go ahead.
You're telling me this for the first time. Some people on Reddit
but the reason
very angry?
They were angry is because they sort of lost hope that there would be anything sort of reasonably put into Marvel Snap and developed that isn't immediately monetizable, and monetizable in a very aggressive way. And that does not feel good.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's like the biggest critique. So again, TLDR on the development roadmap is basically we had development roadmaps come out for a while, and they would sort of be showcasing some things, talk about things in develop and in concept. And a lot of those things didn't make it onto the most recent list. And people felt like, yeah, I mean, how would you sum up how people felt about that?
So my understanding, and this is, we'll call it quasi-informed speculation,
Okay.
is that they got a lot of feedback on previous ones, like, hey, why are you putting this crap on there that you're not actually going to do? And so with this one, their approach seemed to be, we're putting stuff we are concretely moving toward on there, like things we are investigating. They're not like guaranteed to happen, but like there are people in the company working on these things, right? And I don't know if that was the approach previously, or maybe the feedback they got was like sort of made them gun shy. They didn't want to put a bunch of stuff on there for fear people would be like mad at it. But I do think that it's sort of fascinating that it certainly looks to me like they announced a game mode where you get a card for free and everyone is still mad and they're saying that's not what they wanted.
Yeah.
And that is confusing to me because you are getting a card for free. Like,
which game mode is this specifically? Like
the Deadpool's Diner.
Deadpool's Diner. Okay, how does that work?
It has Cassandra Nova on the reward track.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very least, there's a variant of her at the end of it, right? And that is every other. Like, I can't imagine. There's two things here. The first is I cannot imagine you can earn the variant and somehow not get the card. Every other time you get a variant of a card, you get the card, right? Mm-hmm. The second thing is I wouldn't be shocked if the actual card was lower on the reward track than at the end. Because the Deadpool's Diner event is just like, it's Marvel Snap, but like higher stakes, so earn a bunch of points in it or whatever, right? And I personally do not like the implementation of it, just from what I've heard. I think skill gating cards is really stupid. I think you need to make it easily grindable with time as opposed to gated behind winning a bunch. I think the last thing we need is a situation where all the people who already bought all the other cards end up getting this card for free because they have better decks, and all the people who do not have access to those are unable to acquire this card for free. That is my fear. And so to me, the easier that card is to acquire, the better this update gets. Because you know this, every time anyone asks me, what do I want out of Marvel Snap? Game cheaper. That's it, right? And if they're giving me a free card, that's a really good way to do game cheaper. And I guess my worry is they're going to hear all this, everyone getting mad at everything, right? And they're going to be like, oh man, I guess we shouldn't give them free cards. They don't like that enough. Like that's my fear.
So
I would be very afraid of that. Like I don't want that to happen. And it just sort of like, I just don't understand, like, if you're messaging this, how do you not start with that?
Yeah.
Like, how is that not the thing you're talking about? How am I still wondering if this card is actually free? How do you not be like, yo, top line item here. We are putting Cassandra Nova available to grind free to play. How is that not the first thing you say? And I don't get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because if it were me, that's the first thing I would say is like, we're introducing new ways for you to acquire cards. Check it out. Look at Deadpool's Diner. Like, I don't know why that isn't the top line item here. I just don't.
I have a somewhat tangential thing to say, and I think it's a bold statement. It came into my mind, maybe something stupid to say, but I want to say it because I actually do believe it. And I don't necessarily believe it on evidence. It's just like a part of me like believes this deep down. I believe that the Marvel Snap monetization system or test or experiment is a failure. And I think that it will result in failure. Ultimately, I do not think it will work. I think the game is too monetized and it is not going like thermo sublayer business thing. We've talked about the Snapshot a million times.
Sure.
I believe that is
Thermo
inevitable.
Klein, but yeah.
But I also believe, and the reason why, and I do think that Marvel Snap is simply, or Second Dinner is too big and that the machine sort of exists within itself too much to be reverted away from that because of maybe how much money they've raised, how many people they've hired, and these sort of numbers that they have to hit. I think that we are going down this road no matter what. And I do think that we are going to hit that thermo, whatever the fuck, sublayer thing, because like I don't know. It's so hard to be like, am I reading the vocal minority? Is this a niche group of people that's angry about this? Or like, what is my experience? Because my experience is people are really frustrated with the monetization and the future monetization of the game as well, because they feel like it's only getting further optimized, right? They're just looking for more ways to get money out of
Right.
this.
And I think that's what I'm talking about. Like, isn't
Yeah.
that insane? They just announced a mode where you get a card for free and people were like, we're being milked.
Exactly. I think that it's really starting to boil over, and it's hard to look at that and be like, okay, am I reading the opinions of a, maybe a not so sane person or a minority that or opinion that does not represent the player base, and are these people overreacting? Or are people just so jaded and pissed off at this point that they're just looking for a reason?
Right. Like, that's what I think it is. Because, like, either they weren't, like, I'm speculating that this card is free.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, there's a variant on the end of the reward track. We kind of know what that means, right? Like, if you get the variant, you're going to get the card. But, like, I don't know. Maybe you could buy a boost, right? Maybe you can get extra points in the Deadpool diner if you spend $2.99. And I think that's the issue, right? People are expecting that. People are expecting this mode to somehow be paywalled. And if it is, I would not hesitate to call it an absolute failure.
I, again, in my sort of like non sequitur additions to this conversation, I believe that where Marvel Snap really committed like its cardinal sin was like the very expensive bundles. Because even when you said a $2.99 boost, like those kind of things are so palatable to me. They're so ephemeral to me. It's hard for me to like add them up and get angry about them. But every single time I open the shop, I know it's a variant. And I see that $99 tag. I'm like, it disgusts me. I'm like, no. I'm like, how could you do that? How could you make it cost $100? I could do a million microtransactions at $1.99 and $2.99 at my convenience,
Sure.
by the way, when I want to. But when you throw that $100 tag on it, it just like, as a consumer, I just feel like I'm getting fucked.
I wonder, because like it does sort of feel like they keep making decisions that make people angry, even if those decisions are like helpful, because any helpful decision is sort of obfuscated by all these layers of gamification.
Yeah. And I wonder, like, if the internal systems that propel Second Dinner at this point are just, they're set in motion, right? Because they have to meet this quota or that quota, and they have this many people working for them, and they have to, they're spending X amount of money per month, and like it is just, Marvel Snap just is that super monetized game. We can never sort of retrace back to a place where people would actually be happy. Because like, there's going to be a point when, I don't know, it feels like this general sentiment that the only way to bring people back, the only way to stop all of this sort of anger and hatred is just make the game legit free. And that's just never going to be an option, it feels like.
Yeah, I really don't know. Like, it's always sort of tough to like read social media, but I think it's been extra tough recently.
Yeah.
Where like I'll post a bunch of decks and like all the comments are like, I don't have Cannonball, I don't have Nocturne, I don't have Sage. And then they're mad at me for it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like I'm taking shit for this acquisition system. And it's like, I have been very open about how much I just want the game to be cheaper. And how much I just want there to be like free to play ways to earn cards, and how much I am constantly pushing for that. And now I'm out here and it's like they threw me into the crossfire because I'm someone who talks about good decks. Good decks sometimes involve new cards. Not everyone has the new cards. And so I take shit for it.
Yeah.
And I think that just sort of sucks.
It's got to be an issue.
And
with
I
the
got to just deal with it, right?
It's got to be an issue though, because okay, maybe Marvel Snap is more expensive than Hearthstone, but you would not get that kind of shit in Hearthstone. If you did, it was definitely the minority, right? It was the minority. It was like, I'm a free to play player. This constructed deck.
It's the minority here.
Okay,
then I'm not gonna. I think it was less. That's all my comments.
Yeah, I would say it was. I felt like it was an outlier in Hearthstone, where you would maybe post something and someone would complain that that's a pay to win deck. That just like wasn't a thing, but it feels like almost the first thing that gets brought up in this game. And
do you know why?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is it because of the way the service model works? And it just
no, it's because you can play Marvel Snap free to play.
Yeah,
you can't play Hearthstone free to play. There's no expectation unless you're like grinding Arena. There's no expectation of doing that. Like, you are very unable to realistically compete at the top levels. Like, in a way, it's a symptom of the fact that Marvel Snap makes playing free to play easier.
Yeah.
To the point that these players can be good enough to realize how much they need those new cards, right? Like, there is no expectation in Hearthstone of like, you come back. I mean, actually, they did do a thing very recently where like they gave away the really good decks to like starter and returning players, which I think is awesome. And I think it's definitely something Marvel Snap could look into. But like, one of the things Marvel Snap does really well is let people compete on a budget. And what happens is those people are able to compete on a budget, but they're not able to like fully optimize on a budget. And that seems to be what their goal is, right? Like, there are going to be some decks that are just like mid-range soup good cards, right? And then like the F2Ps are playing hella. And it's like, that seems like it's probably very good for monetization. But I do think that it creates the expectation that you should be able to, compete for free or have all the decks for free. And that's not a realistic expectation because Marvel Snap is a freemium game.
Yeah.
And Hearthstone is a game where you buy packs.
Yeah. Do you think people feel cheated or tricked? Because let's even look at another example, which I think is relevant, but egregious, like Flesh and Blood. You'd be looking at constructed deck, $600, $800. Not a single motherfucking person at a tournament would complain about the buy-in price of the deck. Maybe somebody who doesn't play a game, when you're at like a Magic pre-release, would be like, oh, you play Flesh and Blood? Yeah, it's like $600 buy-in. It's not for me. And you'd be like, okay. But nobody playing the game would just randomly be complaining at a tournament. Like, there's some sort of disconnect that's going on here.
It's because it's a freemium game. Yeah. Like, that's why you get this stuff for free. And so what's actually being gated is your time. And you feel like you're being charged to like skip 2 months, basically. And it's like, well, that fucking sucks. What the fuck?
I could get it for free. Yeah.
Right. And so instead of like, they basically never figured out how to square the circle because their game model is very generous. And every time they try to monetize it, in order for their game model to be generous, they have to be like massive increases in prices on the bits where they're not generous, right? So like, yeah, okay, you get, I don't know what's the percentages, like 67% of the cards in the game just for free over a course of time. But you can't speed that up. It will not be faster for you, and you have to spend a shitload of money if you want to speed it up. And if you want those remaining cards, you better start getting ready to pay.
Yeah.
And so there's this situation where it's like people have 8 out of the 12 cards for a deck, but the remaining 4 cards are 24,000 tokens, and it's just totally out of their reach.
Yeah.
And there's this the situation that creates the feelings that engenders among players are just not pleasant feelings. And so I think that's why this community is the way that it is, personally. And I don't blame them. One thing that I really miss, like, people don't know this about me. Everyone just like quits and plays Magic. It happens, right? Like you stop playing Magic and then you come back to Magic. One of the time, like I've gotten into Magic a couple times in my life. And each time the intro has been budget decks. I remember there was a column on the Wizards website back in like 2009, 2010, where they were talking about budget decks. And that's how I got back into Magic, right? Saffron Olive doing his budget Magic series in like 2016, 2017. That's how I got back into Magic. Like, the fact that I can't do that, the fact that Marvel Snap is so individualized that if I call a deck a budget deck, everyone who clicks the video, it's going to be like 25% of people actually have those cards. The other 75% are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? This isn't budget. And that makes me angry because that's the content I want to make. And not only does it do terribly on YouTube because of this, it's functionally impossible to figure out. Because what you end up saying is like, okay, I guess Series 3 is budget, but then it's like kind of hard to complete Series 3, isn't it? So
yeah,
like,
surely
like
now
you gotta like, what if you're missing that last card in Series 3? I guess you're fucked, right? And it's like, what is budget? So you want me to play Pool 2 decks at like rank 10 infinite? You want me to do that? Like, I think last time I checked, I was like rank 18. You want me to do that? You want me to just incinerate my ranks like that? Because I do think that would be roughly incinerating my ranks. I could try like Pool 2 in a season pass. And it's like, there's not enough power in the early pools to build a full deck out of them. Mm. And the only thing you can define as budget is Pool 1 and Pool 2, which are very explicitly intro cards, some of which stay useful, some of which don't. But you can't get a full 12 out of that. And once you start adding in Series 3 cards, it's like up to the will of the gods if people have those or not. And when you're adding in Series 3 cards, like, it's very reasonable for someone to have like 3 or 4 Series 5 cards before they finish Series 3. Yeah. So what the fuck is budget? I don't know anymore. And I can't, because it's so individualized, I can't do it.
So hot take and working idea from me. That Marvel Snap is actually like one of the worst casual games ever created. It's casual, like you can do the free-to-play experience at the beginning and live in that little microcosm, but then once you exit that, like you can't put the game down, it feels like, ever. And if you ever put it down, you try to come back and you're like, the barrier to entry to buy, even try to buy those cards. First of all, it becomes very apparent those cards are going to cost you hundreds of dollars. You're like, fuck, okay, I just want one functional deck, and now I'm missing 4 cards, and it feels like it's hundreds of dollars. But to try to get those cards, to even buy them, you couldn't even just click like auto buy or something like that. It would put it in your cart, you could check out. It's like, no, now you got to wait, you got to come refresh, you got to have tokens, you got to do this, and you're like, okay, I just wanted to pick up and play Marvel Snap for the new season, and now I like never want to pick up the game again. Like, it is... Yeah. It's such a bad model, in my opinion, because we're getting to the point, bro. I told you 2 months ago, I'm out here throwing it back, trying to get these cards. I'm low on tokens. Now I'm coming back and I'm like, I'm missing 2 cards of the one deck I want to play. And I'm like, fuck, yeah. What am I going to do?
Yeah. Like, I am planning a piece of content, hopefully pending TM.
Yeah.
With TLSG about this, because I think he has a very informed perspective on this as someone who just stopped playing for 9 months.
Yeah.
And like a very good player who stopped playing for 9 months. So I think hopefully I'll be able to dive into that with him, because I think it's just such a unique perspective to have as like, this is like a very good player, a content creator. You monetize the cards you own, and he just off for 9 months. What does that mean? And so I'm really hopeful that we get something out of that, because it's definitely an area I feel needs pretty vast improvement.
Yeah. And what about the people that want to... New season comes out. I think monthly season is great. That's super fun. It's super exciting. New season comes out. I want to play for a week. I want to hit infinite. I want to try out the new cards, get a new feel. Maybe we have a new game mode, some new locations. Like, I want to try that out, but then I want to put it back down. That is like, that's a huge fucking no-no. You cannot do that. You got to be hitting your missions. Like, and you got to be checking in for caches, like to get these cards that come out. Maybe you weren't playing in the 3rd week, but that 3rd week card's going to be good, and you think it will scale well in the future. Yeah, it's killer. Like, it is killer.
One of the things I hated the most about every gacha game I ever played is the fucking stamina mechanic to make you log on regularly.
Oh, yeah.
It sucks so much ass, and it's why I've dropped every single gacha game of all time.
Yeah.
And Marvel Snap does not have that stamina mechanic per se, but it's not necessarily all that removed.
Yeah. I think that Marvel Snap's value prop of if you play our game, if you do all of your weekly missions, do all that stuff, like, it is reasonably acquirable. It is. Like, look at the people that do it. They almost have full collections. There's a lot of people that spend very little money and they get away with it. It's just that if you don't do that, if you are not knocking out all your missions, completing the season pass, which is playing the fucking game. It's not a big ask, right? It's playing the game, but people just don't do it for one reason or another. Their interests are varying. They are hot on the game, they're not, or they're busy. Man, the game feels unplayable. Like, if it is rough. It is rough if you are not consistently playing. I think that's for me, that's the biggest issue I have with the game right now, is it just doesn't feel casual. I can't pick it up and put it down. It feels like I gotta play, no matter how I'm feeling. Let's read off this development roadmap, okay? So starting off, we had 3 columns. It goes coming soon, in development, in concept. Coming soon is Deadpool's Diner, which we talked about. Improved technical performance, custom card improvements. Then in development, we have alliances, leagues, new card mechanic, collectible infinity splits. And in concept, we have draft mode, card acquisition improvements, which really pissed a lot of people off, and alliances competition. What do you think about this card acquisition improvements?
I think that's kind of an unforced error because it's like, don't put that on the roadmap and be like, in concept, we're gonna put it in the farthest away section of the roadmap.
Also, how are people trained? Like, whether this system is better than the previous system, a lot of people perceive the system to be worse than the previous one. So when they see card acquisition improvements, they think more ways to extract my money. And actually, I'm sure a lot of people think this game's going to become more expensive in a sense. Like, what is improving card acquisition? Does that mean it's cheaper? Does that mean I get more cards? Or does it mean that card acquisition is improved and they get more money?
If I had to guess, what it means is a system that is roughly equivalent to this, but feels better. Mm-hmm. That would be my impression, which feels like shuffling deck chairs around a little bit. But it's possible that's possible. I don't really know. But I would guess that the goal is we want to keep our monetization at the same level, but we want to avoid like how shitty it feels when you roll the 4th one, where like you're just doing like a shitty die roll to acquire a new card or whatever, right? Like maybe like this is why I'm kind of wondering about the Deadpool's Diner thing. Like, is there some way to make that monetizable and make it the main method of card collection? I don't know. Like, I don't really know anything about monetization, unfortunately. That's not really my bailiwick. But it's a very, very weird situation, in my opinion, because it's like, I think they want to keep monetization at roughly the same level, but remove the bad feelings out of it. And I worry that if that's what they do, what people are going to do is be like, this doesn't actually make the game cheaper. Fuck you.
Yeah. There's no way that I think it's unlikely that what this really means, at least on their side, is a way to make less money. Surely not. Like, I would be surprised if Second Dinner made any strategic decisions at this point that would immediately like hurt the bottom line in a drastic way. It just does not seem like that is the way they approach things. And reasonable. They're a business. We're playing their game, and it is a is a service, like we are paying for it, and that is fine. I don't have an issue with that. I think that it's fascinating to talk about, as we progress in the snapshot through all these episodes, but it will also be fascinating to look back on, because I do think that they just made some critical errors when it comes to what they say they're offering, what people think they're offering, and what they're actually offering. Because like there's an incongruence, right? There's a lot of cognitive dissonance around this game. In my opinion.
It's sort of like I almost think it's not even worth trying unless it meaningfully improves the experience, right? Mm-hmm. And the worst possible scenario is they do something that meaningfully improves the experience. I don't know what that would be, because come on now. But it like is 1% worse in terms of like ratio of money spent to cards acquired or whatever. And then like every website runs an article about how shitty it is. And it's just like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't know what they would have to do. I almost feel like in order to earn back consumer goodwill, they'd have to be like, we're going to make 20% less money. I don't even know if that would do it.
I don't even know if that would do it. Hey, maybe just like screw consumer goodwill. Maybe it doesn't matter, right? Like, I don't know. Because to an extent, like, I'm sure the consumers to a certain level are not fair when evaluating Second Dinner. To an extent, like, whether they made it 20% cheaper still might piss people off. And they're like, why are we doing this? It doesn't change the size of our customer base at all, but contracts the amount of money we get out of them by 20%. And the amount of goodwill we gain is 0. Yeah, I don't know. All right. Anything else you want to talk about on the development roadmap before we hop into new cards and OTAs?
I'm good.
All right. Well,
sorry, someone in my Discord is saying Adam Warlock was good. I'd put the fuck kibosh on that shit.
Adam Warlock was good. All right. So we had a couple new cards. First one was Gilgamesh 5/7 on reveal, +1 power for each of your other cards in play with increased power. How'd it land for you?
It's a little underpowered, but it's mostly because there's a lot of competition at the 5. where it's like, this is a card that you play with Blue Marvel, and Gilgamesh Blue Marvel was pretty good for me in like good cards shells, where it was like, oh, this is actually pretty nice. But fundamentally, why would you be doing that when you can play Professor X Cannonball or Iron Man Claw or other packages that are more well positioned into a Prof X Cannonball metagame, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's not like he's all that ass or anything. He's just not built for this. And he is a little ass. There was a data mine version that was like 5/2 gets +2 for everything. And I think a lot of people have been like, oh, you should have released the data mine version. And I'm pretty sure those people are dumb because that card is bigger than Red Hulk. Like, I don't know if people are aware of this, but if they made that 5/2 one, it would be, you would hate this card. It would be Eliath. It would be Red Hulk. It would be Blob. You'd be like, what the fuck is this? Why would they ever do this? Like, I've been wrong about big guys enough that I'm fairly confident I'm right about this big guy. If you're making a fucking 5/24 and you're like, yeah, that's fine. No. That said, I mean, I kind of think, here's my Gilgamesh pitch. 5/9.
Yep.
That's my pitch.
All right, next one is Athena 2/1. After each turn, +3 power if you played exactly 2 cards.
She's quite good.
Yeah.
The issue is she's like fairly limited in use, which is she goes in Ravonna package decks, and that's kind of it, right? If you're not playing Angela, if you're not playing Ravonna, if you're not playing Kitty Pryde, and I just named 2 Series 5 cards into Series 4. Is Ravonna still Series 5? I think she's Series 4, right? She released Series 4. Anyway, the point is, it's what you could affectionately call the pay to win package. It's just kind of what's going on right now, and it's like, okay, so not only does Angela, like, this whole archetype got so much help, right? You had this Ravonna stuff, and Ravonna was like a pretty good card when she had nothing to enable. She's like pretty mediocre, but like playable. Now she enables not just Professor X, which got Cannonball to make it more of a knockout punch. She enables Sage, who is an enormously powerful 3-drop. She enables Thena. She enables, and this isn't necessarily in addition to what Ravonna does, but that deck as a whole is always an Angela Kitty deck. It got Nocturne, who is second Jeff. And so like in the last, 2-3 months, it's gotten 4 absolute all-stars. And suddenly, well, it turns out that when you get a third of a deck, it's very good. When a third of your deck is absolute all-stars that just came out, it's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I want to quickly, if needed, touch on the stone nerf for Thanos, because we have a lot of questions to get to. Are there any stone? Sorry,
you mean
buff. I meant change, to be honest. I just meant change. But is there any stone you want to talk about in particular before we get into the question? Because I also, at the end of this podcast, I want to hit on our power evaluations for this month's cards, because we didn't do that this month. We skipped that episode.
I could have done it.
I was ready. Monday morning, I was alive.
Morning. That time when I'm famously awake and available.
Yeah.
No, I have my Mondays are really honestly quite shitty. Yeah. It sucks. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about with Thanos is green, blue, and yellow are now, or orange, I should say, are now just phenomenally fun to play. You don't have to worry about timing with any of them anymore. Like, there's no like, oh, do I need to save this for later? No, you don't. You play it and you draw a card and it fucking rocks. I'm a big fan of that. I do think it removes some of the skill cap of Thanos, because a lot of like skill cap in Thanos is knowing when to play the cards. Like, they're making the deck easier to play. Also good, for the record. And I think that this is a fun and powerful deck to play right now. It's pretty okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I'm happy for it. Thanos is one of my favorite cards in the game, and I have a lot of the cards for the Thanos deck. So that deck I can play at this point. Let's get into the Bend&Snap. This is our listener question section. If you want to get your question read out in next week's podcast, shoot us a comment on YouTube. And don't you make it, this is my favorite podcast. Everybody who did it last week, you got banned. You're gone forever.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Week. Yeah. No one did it last week, Brendan.
Yeah. All right. First one is from Praetorian. They say, I was a personal, I'm assuming, trainer for 4 years and had a younger client who was above 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, never trained before. When we did a dumbbell press for the first time, I asked if he wanted to try 25 or 20 pounds. Knowing he couldn't do 25, but didn't want to be condescending. He chose the heavier weight, couldn't even do one rep. He was shaky and uncoordinated. He had never used those stabilizing muscles or recruited fast twitch muscle fibers to move heavy weight. Went down to 20 reps, and 20 pounds, he could do 10 reps easily. Personally, my 1 rep maxes were 180 on bench, by far my weakest lift, 250 on squat, 370 deadlift. Not big numbers, but for someone who weighs 160 pounds to put me in an intermediate athlete level. So a lot of this is relative, and practically no one is walking off the street and benching 250 pounds. This is in regards to running versus benching. Like, what is mid, what is not mid.
Like, it's just not a thing you're going to be able to do.
I agree.
There was a guy back in college who is this enormous man.
Okay.
Like a big man.
Big fella.
And I wanted to get him in the gym because I knew if he lost weight, he'd be a fucking like god level. Like if this guy got jacked, it would be like it's over for these hoes.
Oh, we should answer that debate for any of our listeners. Do you want to start heavy? Like, let's say you were going to start lifting, you're going to start working out. Do you want to start overweight? And I mean, obviously, this is all relative, and we don't know shit. But
how disciplined are you?
Do you want to start big, or do you want to start small? Would you rather be skinny, or would you rather be big and fat?
You would rather start big as long as you have the discipline to do it. Because one thing about American culture, at least in America, it's very easy to find insane bullshit food to eat and get larger. It's easy to do. People talk about how it's hard to do. Yeah. I get it. But like, I guarantee you I could find you some shit that would fatten you up. I guarantee it. But I think it's always, as long as you have the discipline, you'd always rather have the extra weight. I think in terms of actually having that discipline, I know for me at least, part of the reason I have the extra weight is I don't have that discipline. So, you know.
Yeah. I guess I do. I've tried doing a lot of fasting. Like, I fast for most of the day. And honestly, like, the worst part about it is not nausea. It's not like, that happens. You'll feel nauseous sometimes. Your stomach will hurt. But the worst part about it is when you stop getting dopamine from food, you get pretty fucking bored sometimes. Like, it's crazy. You got to figure out.
I just cooked and ate an entire thing of pasta, like a whole thing, and I just covered it in pesto. Oh, that's my shit right there.
You gotta throw some chicken on that too, and yes,
literally just nothing else. Just pasta, pesto, salted water. That's I have, if I wanted to point to one failure my parents did while raising me, it is that I have so many childish habits. And I get that that's a realistic thing to expect from someone who makes a living playing video games, right? Like, I have, but like, I
very
have
self-aware, yes.
so many childish habits, right? And one of them is just like, if I cannot put any work into this, I'd rather do that.
Yeah.
So like, what? I'm gonna go cook and cut up some chicken? Fuck you, no way.
So this is actually this is a funny topic. And Jesus Christ, the comments are going to be ridiculous at this point. But I don't attribute, like, and you're not doing this, but I'm super, like, hands off, like, far away from. I would never attribute, like, anything that I try not to my parents, how I was brought up. But if my parents made one mistake, here it was. If there was one mistake when I was growing up, it's my parents, and this is, if you grew up in the 90s, you grew up in the 2000s, you probably went through this as well. When I would ask why I couldn't do something or why I shouldn't do something, especially when it came to something that was maybe morally questionable, like something like...
Is it because I said so?
Yeah. Cheating on my homework or something like that. My parents would say, because. You can't do it because. And that created that created a problem. You want to know why? Because you know what happened when I grew up? I realized that you can do it. You can. You know what happened? And you know what happens? Fucking nothing. So, but here's the thing, is it comes full circle, is because they were right. So when you get to these things like, why can't I sleep in? Why can't I coast through college? Why can't I cheat on my homework? Why can't I not do the hard thing? Why can't I not exercise? Nothing's going to happen. Like, for the most part. The problem is, you know what's going to happen is in 10, 15, 20 years, you realize that you were only cheating yourself the whole time. If they could just fucking told me that, that's like the one hard lesson that I had to learn, is because, yeah, I don't know. Like, there was this like rebellious part of you is like, oh wait, I can just do these things and nothing happens. And then you realize like 5-10 years later that you were just being a fucking idiot. And you're like, okay. But yeah, because I said so, bullshit, man. That's the only one where it's like, I just disagree with that. I disagree.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's weird because like as a kid, you don't really have autonomy. And as an adult, you have that autonomy and you realize that, oh, I'm a human being who can make my own decisions. And then you have to be like, oh, what are those decisions actually going to be?
Yeah. Very intangible punishments, right? Like we're talking 5-10 year, I mean, multi-decade long punishments that you will not realize that are not clear. And that if someone had explained it to you, maybe they would just sound like bullshit. It's like, oh, hey, if you don't do your work in college and even if you get all the good grades, you won't be as smart and you'll regret that. And you're like, no, I won't. I will enjoy the free time.
I am like that. I am currently living like that. I do enjoy the free time.
Yeah, I don't think there's a 0% to that. Like, I don't think that's like zero. That's like 0% correct. You know, there is a level to which, yeah, I mean, you do enjoy the free time, but it takes a level of maturity to kind of come full circle on that and realize, like, yeah, maybe those hedonistic decisions I was making for my pleasure in the moment were not best for my long-term development as a human being. And it's hard for a fucking 12-year-old to figure that out. It's less hard when you're like 30 and you're looking back and you're like, I'm a dumbass. Yeah. Anyway, next one is Feth XR. Cam, rather than transitioning away from the gym because of that shoulder, consider it, wait for it. How about leg day?
I knew it was going to.
Yeah, of course, it's always fucking leg day.
I honestly have hit a sort of nadir in my personal health where I've been skipping a lot of gym stuff and I've been eating a lot of shit. And I started going back to the gym and it's like, wow, this is actually really hard. And it used to be this thing that I did because I loved it. But once you fall out of the habit, it's hard to restart it. And so I'm working on that right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the gym after this. In fact, Brendan, would you be too offended if I left to go take some pre-workout right now?
That would be offensive. Yo, that's one of the things so pre-workout.
Okay. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go do it. You're going to lecture nobody. You're not lecturing me. You're not going to be like because to me. Okay. Do not look at me and say because.
Audio listeners will never know what happened. But, yeah, so for me,
I'm not actually going to go do it.
The reason why it's easy for me is like, I think obviously I'm in the habit, but also that's where a lot of my dopamine for the day comes from. That's where I listen to music. That's where I take pre-workout. Yes, I take pre-workout. It does help. Do you need it? Should you take it? No, but it does fucking help. And like that's where I kind of see other human beings and socialize for most of the part of the day, which is going to be a negative, but it's mostly a positive. So if I don't do that, dude, I'm like, it's not a good day.
That's how it used to be for me. How it used to be for me. But like then I realized, wait, I could just skip this. And I could just lie here I could take this caffeine from the pre-workout and direct it entirely towards browsing the internet. I could just browse the internet on that caffeine instead. Also, all seriousness, are you cool with me doing that? I don't want to like disrespect you in any way if I like go take the fucking pre-workout. I felt bad. Okay.
Go for it. Next one is from ES. They say, I appreciate Second Dinner so much as a developer after experiencing the relaunch of Multiverses. Holy shit. Snap's monetization is fantastic in comparison. I did not play Multiverses. Cam and I both talked about at one time how the Marvel Snap IP, at least in the initial stages of Marvel Snap, was actually a downside for us. We've come more around on it, because we associated Marvel Snap with D-list movies. And if you enjoy those movies, it's okay. But because of that, yeah, like didn't have a lot of crossover IP, I don't know, exposure, to say the least. And I haven't played Multiverses yet, but I did play Warcraft Rumble, which is a giant pile of garbage and was heavily monetized. And I think that game is dead at this point. Maybe some people play it, but who knows? All right, next one is from Hamlet, Bend&Snap. Do you think Marvel Snap would ever consider a mode that involves some kind of sideboarding or even adding it to Conquest? Or with the small sizes of decks and the fact that there are packages like Annihilus that only require 2 to 3 cards, would it just be too game warping? This is a question about, Cam, about sideboarding and Marvel Snap. Do you ever think it could be a thing?
No.
Why specifically?
You guys hate tech cards? You guys hate auto losses? Yeah, no.
That's all sideboarding is. Sideboarding works in... Yeah, sideboarding kind of works in Magic. If you play Magic, you like you felt the good parts of sideboarding. The bad parts of sideboarding can, and especially in games that are not really set up to facilitate sideboarding. So like Hearthstone tried to do a competitive mode where they added sideboards, and basically it just sort of made the gameplay like whoever just draws their tech card first and like hoses the other person. It was terrible. And people hated it.
That's actually really important though. These games are, and like with all due respect, dramatically less complex than Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, that game is. Like, I just got back from Modern Horizons pre-release, dude. I was stimulated. I was sweating.
There's a lot of words on those cards. There's a lot going on.
I had so many triggers going on. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. I have a couple friends who contracted on MH3, and I like every so often they'll like go on Twitter and post a story about like, you know, some card, right? And it was, I think, Mason Clark who posted one that was like it's a green land that has like 2 GG on it.
Yeah.
For 2 GG, no tap, and it also can tap for mana. It turns into any card in the graveyard. And so it's just like, okay, that's just a lot of things you can do. Like, there's no card in Marvel Snap that is that complex. And when you don't have complexity in your design, you don't have complexity in your hosers and your tech cards. And so our tech cards in Marvel Snap are these blunt force weapons.
Yeah.
There's no dynamism in them. It's just do you or don't you, right? And so you have this, like, it's the same in Hearthstone, right? Like, with all due respect, like, what they'll have when they talk about a tech card in those games versus a tech card in Magic is so different. And the amount of impact it'll have on a game is so different.
Yeah.
There are cards in Marvel Snap that basically just read, win the matchup. And if you just have those in your sideboard, that's awful.
Yeah, Magic has them too, but both players can implement them. But the thing about Magic, so when you think about Magic, you really have to appreciate the land variance. Because if you look at something like Hearthstone, where you have this smooth mana curve, like you're just basically only have draw variance to an extent. You also have pilot variance, but you add tech cards
and random generation variance.
Yeah,
they put a lot
you
of
add tech cards into a game that doesn't have that inherent mana variance. I'm not saying it completely nullifies the concept of it, but it does kind of make the feels bad of the tech card like way consistent, right? Because you're like, oh, if I just hit my 2-drop, that doesn't let you play like fucking mage cards or something, like, and you're a mage, like, yeah, it sucks. It's not fun.
Every so often, I think about lands and I think about what a genius move it was to, like, you know, just be so far ahead of your time.
Yeah.
But what always ends up happening is like, it's like, oh, lands, they're so far ahead of their time, but we can do better now. But here's the thing. I haven't ever run into a system that changes the texture of a game the way lands do Magic, where it's like this matchup can play out totally differently based on the ratio of lands and spells drawn between the two players.
Yeah.
And that is insane. Like, that is just a very, like, it makes Magic replayable.
You are in every game. Doesn't matter how dog shit you are. You are in that game. That's
amazing.
Real. That's real.
It's amazing.
Lands are a bell curve. We've talked about it. They suck.
They're genius.
Yeah,
they're genius.
They suck. They're genius, and they suck. I don't know. Here's the fact. Here's close to a fact. This is about as close to a fact as you can get when you talk about.
You just called me a midwit.
Something like lands.
You just called me a midwit. You were like, they suck. They're genius. They suck. You called me the fat part of the bell curve.
Dude, it is a frequent insult of mine that I will tell people they're right at the top of the bell curve because it does not immediately click. Anyway, one fact about lands is that there have been not a million, but there's been a lot of games that have tried to fix lands. They've tried to make a better mana system because it's so clearly broken, right?
Yeah, it sucks.
They're pretty much all dead. All those games are dead. I saw Brian Gottlieb made that exact tweet. He's like, you know, there's clearly issues. Everybody tries to solve the mana system. It's the first thing people try to do when they're like making new card games. Like, how do we fix this issue with Magic? All those games, pretty much all those games die.
And it's genius. It's so smart. Like, it just the fact that games will play out differently based on, oh, I missed this land drop, but I made my others. Now I'm a little bit behind, but I'm still in a favored matchup. Like, that is insane. Like, that is such depth that just other games have it, but not to that degree.
Yeah. I think lands Cardinal Sin lands do is they sometimes ruin the gameplay. Like one thing you get with Marvel Snap is like you just get very consistent good gameplay. Magic sometimes like you pay a price for that system that leads to varied games but can lead to not playing games sometimes, which is not great. All right, this one's from Thee. Say, how would y'all recommend using resources if trying to min max value as much as I can? I spent 6K tokens on Pixie and learned what I think is a lesson. Don't spend 6K tokens on a card unless it's widely usable or a very powerful outlier.
Well, I don't really think spending 6K tokens on Pixie is all that bad. I actually I don't play a lot of Pixie, but she's sort of like, okay, if you have a strategy that you're like, I don't really think this is exactly good enough, but I think it's like close enough. Like you can very easily just like Pixie Mobius and make that strategy make sense. Like there is something to it where it's like, if you have a strategy that you're like, this is probably like 45% into the field, you could throw Pixie Mobius in there and like there's a decent chance it becomes like a reasonable deck. And I really actually appreciate that about Pixie, where it's just like, oh, this is kind of sick, right? Like, I do think now I would feel safe buffing her maybe to like 2-3 if we could do that. But I think she landed pretty perfectly, and she's honestly one of my favorite cards in the entire game. And I do sympathize with this because like one of the things that I've talked about, I made a whole video about this, about how they keep making good cards and that makes it like kind of impossible to, buy any of them because it's like, what if they make a better card next week? And so like I get this a lot with like Nocturne, who is a card I think is like one of, if not the very best card in the game, where it's like, this is actually 3-drop Jeff. I thought she was halfway between Jeff and Red Guardian, and I think she's just 3-drop Jeff. Like, she's that good. And this is a card where, she's a 5 and I called her like a 4.5 out of 5. And it's like, I can see people being like, oh, 4.5 out of 5. I'll wait for a 5. And it's like, it sucks. It sucks so bad.
Yeah. I waited on Nocturne because I was like, it's
so
good, but I was like,
insane.
I'll pick it up around the shop.
I told you it was Jeff Red Guardian. You were like,
no, you said what you just said. You said your caveat part. You're like, it's somewhere between Jeff Red Guardian. It's not that crazy.
It's somewhere between the best 2-drop in the game and the at the time second best 3-drop in the game.
Hey, yeah, good luck.
How is that confusing?
I don't get out of bed for the best card in the game. I don't get out of bed.
I don't know. It's just like I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, did I undersell this card by comparing it with Jeff? Because when I compare it with Jeff, what I'm saying is that is a card with like 50% play rate. Like, this is going to go in every deck you play. And she's going to go in less decks than Jeff. But holy shit.
Bend&Snap from me.
Sure.
Did you see that the Bazaar is coming out?
I did. Did you see that it's backpack battles?
No, so I kind of didn't watch the video because I'm different like that, I guess. Anyway,
I kind of think backpack battles like stole their whole fucking flow.
Backpack battles I didn't play a lot of backpack battles, but it seemed kind of fire. It just didn't really have the game loop that could loop me in. But what I will say is I did watch some of the development videos throughout the 2 decades that Raynad has been trying to develop this game. And I remember like there was someone was like, oh, it's no longer a PvP game. It's just a PvE game. And I was like, what? Anyway.
Does it sell booty coin?
Yeah, selling.
Is there some booty coin integration?
I'm surprised, bro. This thing came out 2 years ago. I think Raynad would have thrown some booty coin farming on it for sure. Anything to get that bitch out. So the Bazaar is coming. If you don't know what the Bazaar is, so there is a a famous Hearthstone player called Raynad.
He invented Zoo.
He invented Handlock and Zoo.
He invented Zoo.
Okay, Zoo. He owns Tempo Storm, and he owns a part of it, the esport league, and he's been developing a card game. And we all thought it was going to come out maybe 5 years ago. And
I honestly like Raynad is who I aspire to be. I like not the like controversies at Magic events, but the like taking being a successful card game person and making it into a brand and a business. Like that's the blueprint, right? Obviously, I'm not following that blueprint very well because I'm not very good at it. But Raynad won, right? Sure. And I absolutely nothing but respect for anyone who was able to take a post being good at a card game career and turn it into what he's turned into. That is phenomenal. Raynad one, Brian Kibler, another example where it's just like smacking shit out of the park.
But Brian Kibler still does play card games, so I feel like Raynad like really just transferred into the brand side. Raynad is just like is Tempo Storm, and I guess he's been working on the Bazaar.
Like Kibler is like his biggest thing is being a Commander streamer now.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think that Kibler is absolutely
shout out
success
Kibler
story.
and Olivia.
Yeah, I think that Kibler is absolutely. So Olivia has cosplayed a lot of Flesh and Blood things, and yeah, I've met her quite a few times because they will. When I'm casting, they invite me to the VIP dinner. Not because I'm a content creator. When I'm casting, you just get an auto invite. So I've been able to meet her a few times there, and she seems super
Olivia
nice.
was on my Rate the Card series.
Oh yeah,
and I am like fairly charismatic for a gamer, right? Like I am well spoken, I am funny, I am able to talk about complex issues in a fairly entertaining and passionate way. Talking to Olivia was like coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb, because it's like, oh, I'm charismatic for a gamer. She's like charismatic for a human being. Like I came away from that thinking like, you worked in politics. Like that's like she did.
She really?
Like,
I had no idea.
Yes,
I had no idea.
Yes. And it's like I came away from that being like, that is so like I was shocked at how easily she adapted to the environment, how easy everything was doing that. And that is a skill. Yeah. Like I've run into people that are charismatic for gamers before, and she's in like an entirely different league.
So since you watched the video, what is the Bazaar?
It's backpack battles.
Okay. Is there any nuance to that? It's like, or is it literally just
first of all, I watched like not all of the video.
Yeah, so you're like me. You're like, yes. I'm so interested in this. I've been waiting 10 years.
I'm not like you. I'm not particularly interested in it. I just consider myself someone who would like to take Raynad's career back.
Okay. So it's backpack battles. Anyway, that game's coming out.
No, it's like I think it. I hope that it will be better. Obviously,
maybe,
but it's like the same. I had never seen a game like Backpack Battles until I saw Backpack Battles. Maybe that's on me, and then I look at the Bazaar and I'm like, oh, it's in that genre.
Okay,
that's what I mean.
It's like auto battler space management.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Okay,
or like inventory management type thing.
I get behind it. I got some Marvel Snap beef.
Sure.
Raven Cass had the audacity to make a tweet. He goes, "It's finally."
Yeah, he should never
here.
do that. Raven, stop tweeting.
It's finally here, and retweets the fucking Bazaar beta, and like that's what it is. It literally just says beta. I was so excited. I went to the website. I was ready. October.
Dude. I will say, actually, shout out to Raven. I have been trying to get better at like game design and stuff like that. I actually often find reading what Raven writes to be like pretty informative, you know? Like I don't always think he's right about stuff, but I think he thinks about things in the right way.
Yeah.
And I think as someone who has like a lot of background in, you know, critiquing game design coming over from Hearthstone, right? That's kind of like what a lot of people did there. I am interested, it feels like, to hear what he has to say almost always. I'll often like push back on it, but I always am interested to hear what he has to say. And I also want to say I've done some casting before. I've done some casting with Raven before.
Yeah.
Same feeling as with Olivia, where it's just like, oh fuck, you're so much better than this than I am. Like I am so bad.
Yeah, I have a lot of exposure to Raven. Because he's been on my Lorcana podcast a few times. I met him when I was in the UK for the Snap event, and he's like best friends with Kala. And I talk to Kala like many, many times a week. So, yeah.
How's
I like
Kala
Raven.
doing, by the way?
He's good. Holy shit, we're on a podcast.
We're doing a podcast about a podcast, all right? Stop.
So, I mean, some people listening might know who that is. He's Marvel Snap creator. Put on one of the early grassroots tournaments. He just got a job, like a normal job, but a cool job. He's working at like a game company. Yeah, so doing cool stuff. And, you know, he's a super successful Lorcana podcaster.
Oh, yeah. You're the biggest podcast in the business, yeah. You might be the only podcast in the business.
No,
I'm not actually
there's
sure.
a lot.
You're the only one I've heard of. That's what I'll say.
There's a lot. There's a lot. Somehow, nobody can stay consistent, though, which blows my mind. Not me last week.
Yeah, that's crazy. Isn't that crazy?
Just like they just don't have the, they don't got that dog in them. Anyway, the last one is from Henry. Question. Agree or disagree, every video game is one of three genres: rhythm game, spreadsheet simulator, or reading simulator.
I assume here we're defining Souls-likes as rhythm games. Because I get that, actually. That makes sense to me. Like, Souls-like, Monster Hunter stuff, you get the pattern of the boss.
Yeah, definitely rhythm.
So, like, that's a rhythm game. Spreadsheet game would
All
be...
card games.
Are card games spreadsheet games?
Yes.
You're just putting numbers places?
Also reading simulators, but yeah, they're definitely spreadsheet games.
Yeah, I buy this, but it's sort of like saying, all games involve either reaction time or math. And it's like, yeah, what else would they involve? All of our games involve certain types of cognitive function.
Mm.
All
games are either rhythm games, spreadsheet simulators, or reading simulators, and the bizarre is just backpack battles. Yep, got it.
I just think it's like, like, what are the senses that a video game can interact with? Your sense of touch, your sight,
arousal.
Right? So like, yeah, certainly. Shout out to Gotcha Games for that one. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Well, like they can only interact with so many of your senses, and you can only do so many things with that. So like, yeah, I guess, but it seems sort of like it's almost like it's a correct point masquerading as revolutionary, where it's like, whoa, that's mind blowing. But then when you think about it, you're like, well, what else would they be? Like,
all right, let's talk about power evaluations for this month, the month of June. First one we have is Cersei. 5/7 on reveal. Transform your other cards here into random cards that cost one more if able.
I have high hopes for this.
That seems
card.
good. I mean, that's value. Variance.
I have high hopes
value
for this card. Yeah. I think this card is going to end up being pretty good. I think one thing that's really sticking in my craw about it, though, is...
What's a craw?
I don't stick in your craw, like, it refers to, like, your mouth.
Okay.
Like, something sticking in my craw is, like, you bit down on something and it's stuck here.
Okay.
Right? I think. Is that a Southern thing?
I've lived in the South most of my life, never heard of it. So
is it a fantasy thing? I'm Googling it. What is it? What is it from? Yeah, it is like... What is the origin of the phrase stuck in my craw? Okay, so what it is like birds would eat stone to grind food down, but sometimes the birds would get the stone stuck in their craw and they were unable to like swallow it. And so when you refer to something being unable to, like a statement you are unable to stomach, that is what that is.
You know what the weirdest etymology for like a statement is for me is balls to the wall. And you're like, you'll hear the level one of it, which is like, it's from aviation, it's from flying. And you're like, okay, I understand. But no, it was first attested to in the 1960s in the context of aviation, a reference to ball-shaped grips on aircraft engine controls.
I always just assumed it was about rhyming. Like, oh, it rhymes with balls.
Yeah, I mean, I did too, honestly. But then when somebody was like, oh, it's from aviation, I was like, okay, I think I understand that. And I went more of a crude way. And I was like, no, it's just like this handle. Anyway, etymology. Where were we? Cersei? Evolve? Yeah. Evolve mechanic in Marvel Snap?
Well, it's a lot more balanced than Snap because there's no such thing as a value trade. But the closest thing we have to a value trade is you play like a Jubilee and then evolve it, or like play like a White Tiger and then evolve it. Shit like that, right? Like, I really want to flag this because it's something that's been rattling around in my brain for a while. We have too many ways to make low power, high value on reveal into a upside. Mm-hmm. We have too many ways to do that. Ravonna, Blink, now Cersei. There are too many ways. Like, just baseline shit in game design is when you're like, oh, this thing does something super powerful as an effect, but it has a small body, right? we have too many ways to turn those small bodies into advantages and just free roll the effects. We have too many ways to do that.
Yeah. That's just card game fundamentals, though. Is okay, here's this card with effect.
Right.
Effect
like,
X,
how the fuck
effect
are they,
X, downside Y. And you're like,
how are they ever supposed to make any more of those?
yeah, how about no downside?
Every
of the
time
Y?
they make one of those, it's busted now. Look at Sage, right? They make Sage, and it's like, that's like a big card at 3, and then everyone just Ravonas it, and it's like the most broken card on Earth when you're only paying 2 for it. And it's like, we keep doing this, and it's like, this is a metagame to me that is defined by low power, high impact effect. That's what it is. Shout out to Professor X, the most low power, high impact effect in the game.
Next up is Makari, 3/3. After the turn,
3/4.
3/4. I said I would stop using my source. I kept using them.
I was waiting for you to say this so I could correct you.
Yeah.
I knew it would happen. I almost thought about bringing it up, and then I was like, nah, I'll let him look into it.
I gotta get a new plug for Marvel Snap cards. All right. Makari, 3/4. After the turn, runs from your hand to a random location, if possible.
It's so weird, because like at 3/3, I looked at this and I was like, that's kind of unplayable.
Yeah.
And at 3/4, I'm like, I'm having thoughts now. Like, ooh, it's probably really hard to Professor X me if I play this card.
I think it's
Probably really
I
hard
think
to
this
do.
one's actually might not be good.
You think it's still bad?
So I would you could take me along the journey of the thought experiment of like 3/3,
Sure.
definitely very unimpressive. Out of the 3/4, okay. It's free, right? But
yeah,
it's just not very impactful.
I think if it were a 3/5, I'd play it in everything. And I know this is a weird thing to say, but the gap between 4 and 5 feels massive right now for reasons I can't explain.
Okay.
I don't know why. I just know that 5 matters. And at 5 is when I start thinking of that as an actual threat to win the lane. And everything smaller than that, is there a single X4 not named Hope Summers that people play right now?
I don't think so.
I don't think there is. A lot of fucking 3/5s, though. And there are a lot more 3/4s than there are 3/5s.
Yeah. Our next up is Fastos. 3/3. On reveal, give each card in your deck -1 cost or +2 power.
I want to make a critique. They named this card Fastos, but he's not fast.
Yeah, he's not fast, no.
Incredible punt. All seriousness, I don't really know if this card is good, it ends up being a staple in a bunch of stuff. But my read on this card is it's not very good. It's like exciting and interesting, but fundamentally, if you don't play this on turn 3, it is complete ass. And even if you do play it on turn 3, it's like, I'm not sure how good this actually is.
Is it interesting, though? It feels very uninteresting to me.
I think a lot of people are interested in this card.
Okay.
And I think it's the mark of a good design. To me, I feel like every card they have released has either been very good, or if it's not very good, it's War Machine, it's Grandmaster, it's doing cool and interesting stuff that we can at least, that because it's in a new space, we're going to be like, oh, okay, this is actually really nice. I do think that there's potential for Surfer here, where this buffs your Broods. That's really interesting. You're a Hope Summers deck, so you can actually plausibly maybe get to 8 energy and be able to play a 3-drop, and a discounted 3-drop on the final turn of the game. Like, there are things this enables you to do that seem pretty powerful to me, but I don't really know if it goes ever beyond that.
All right. Last one. Ep75. At the start of the game, +1 max energy. Shuffle 12 random cards into your deck.
Yeah, I'm not going to review this guy. Sorry.
What?
You can't make me have an opinion on this. It's impossible. You can't sit here and be like, Cam, tell me how good this card is.
Like the
I don't
most interesting
fucking
card
know.
of the whole month.
Sure, but my point is I have no idea. He's a
you
black
want to be
box.
Reynad, you got to fucking evaluate this card.
Fine. Okay. I have no idea. He's a black box.
No tempo stone for you. Tempo stone for you.
He could be anything. I think 2 cards that really stick out for me with this card are Wave and Agent Coulson. Probably going to be a lot of those in my decks. You probably end up making like Arishem Loki with like some busted Wave stuff where you go like Wave into a big guy on turn 3. That's pretty disgusting. Just that gross, right? Other cards that seem really broken when you're ahead of curve. Lady Deathstrike on turn 4 is patently unfair. Things like that seem awesome. My worry is that this deck just becomes sort of like a dumb points deck fundamentally. And so like you run into like, oh, my opponent is playing Hela. Guess I fucking die unless I can go taller. And it's like that sort of shit is worrying for any sort of dumb points deck that is unable to like meaningfully interact or reach the power level of that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I was like, okay, we have these random cards we're drawing. Like, surely that's not good enough for getting +1 max energy. But then I look at Cersei, the card that gets me excited, and it's kind of similar, right? Like, it is random, and you are getting that +1 value. I guess you don't have to, you realize it in an easier way with Cersei. Because you realize it immediately without expending more resources, which is interesting. I think for this month, like, Cersei is by far the most interesting to me.
I agree.
Yeah.
I have very high hopes for her both now and in the future. But I think I am a little bit worried about how she matches up into Professor X stuff. It's hard not to talk about that, right?
Yeah, for sure. All right. I mean, that concludes our power evaluations. Looks exciting. Cam, anything you want to end with? I mean, I just feel like I got so much in the tank because this is like 2 episodes here. We missed an entire week, and we oh my goodness.
No, I'm never gonna let you live it down. You've been on my ass. It's like, no, we can't. We have to do it every week. The most important thing is consistency.
It is.
The most important thing is consistency.
There's only one thing you can control, and there's only one thing that somehow every single other fucking podcast in the world can't do, and it's just show up. It's crazy. And I'm not talking about Alex, Kocha, and fucking Cozy, because obviously they can. But it's crazy. I don't understand. And trust me, I understand.
Now you do. Now you understand. They just have the flu.
No.
You're learning and growing, Brendan. Your experiences as a human being, you're growing.
Yeah, I'm a failure.
Soon you won't be able to fit through doorways.
Yeah, I'm gonna go sideways. Give us one more nugget before we go out. Just something that's been on your mind.
Please delete Professor X, but if you delete Professor X, please also delete Hela.
Delete Hela.
I just think that you can't. If you get rid of Professor X and send us back into the fucking Hela Dark Ages. Yeah. I'm just gonna be upset. I'm sorry. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Prof X stuff is annoying and shitty and strong and definitely better than Hela. But don't just get rid of it. Get rid of the thing it's dealing with, too. Get that shit out of here.
We actually had a Bend&Snap question here. And my favorite part of this is people, they write hashtag Bend&Snap as a way to alert us that this is a question. And it's not one of those million comments that will get you banned on our video for saying this is my favorite X podcast. But this one...
Hashtag this is my favorite X podcast.
This one is hashtag Bend, B-E-N-D, N-I-N, Snap.
Well, they've never seen Legally Blonde.
And I think a lot of people don't know the etymology of Bend&Snap.
Yeah.
So,
it's tough.
Before we get into that, the etymology of Bend&Snap is from Legally Blonde.
This is my favorite etymology podcast.
Oh, shit. Bro, you're going to send a lot of people to the Shadow Realm when they can't comment on future videos. But it's Bend and Snap. And if you haven't seen Legally Blonde, check it out. They say, I'm a Hela enjoyer, but even I can acknowledge her ability is too reliable now. And I remember it starting when they changed Blade to targeted discard. Do you think they should adjust Hela herself or just the pieces around her?
I think they should adjust Hela herself, because what you're describing is a design space limitation, right? Like, Blade is not a problem outside of this context. He's actually a very exciting addition to like normal discard decks, right? He's doing cool stuff everywhere but this. And so for example, cards like Black Knight just kind of wouldn't exist without Blade. And Hela specifically is doing very annoying crap. And Blade is a big part of it. That consistency does matter. But I think they should deal with the card that's doing the annoying crap.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, that concludes episode 75 of the Snapshot, delivered to you right on time at your doorstep. If you enjoy this podcast and you want to support us, you can go to ratethispodcast.com/snapshot. It helps more than anything else. There's a video version of this on YouTube at youtube.com/@the_snapshot. Hit subscribe. Brendan APG, KMBestMS on Twitter. KM is streaming when drops are on in the evening, sometimes, usually.
For extended periods of time. I'm currently running on like 5 hours of sleep. because I stayed up all night streaming. And then I took a nap, and then I watched the NBA Finals. And
how'd that go?
Speaking, do you watch the NBA at all? Or are you?
I'll let you guess first.
I'm gonna say no.
Why would you say no?
Because when I messaged you,
I know my way around a hoop.
No, when I messaged you that I was gonna watch the NBA Finals, you just sort of were like, okay. And I feel like if you were someone who watched it,
me too.
You weren't though. You weren't. And I feel like it's just like this is a thing that is foreign to you. You like also you were a wrestler, and I know this is a weird thing. Wrestlers are into like weird sports. Like I don't know a better way to say it. Like you're not into like mainstream sports is my read. I don't think you're a football guy either.
Well, then what can I be? No football. Where's my identity? I can't use possessive
played rugby.
I can't use possessive
like,
pronouns when talking to my friends about my team.
You played rugby, right? Like you. I don't know. I feel like you're not a sports like a mainstream sports guy. You're
so you think I watch non-mainstream sports. What's it not like?
No,
like
probably
curling?
not. But like you
Golf?
probably keep up with like wrestling in some way. You're probably aware of like who, not like pro wrestling, but like probably like watch some Olympic shit at some point.
All right, I'll
tell me if I'm right.
Okay. I don't watch any sports except for one.
Damn.
One. That's UFC, which I watch a lot.
Sure. Okay, that makes
that
sense.
last card, by the way, doo-doo until the final fight, and then whew.
I didn't watch it. I was streaming, unfortunately. I missed it. Was Reyes on last? Or
No, not
last?
the fight night. The card 302.
Oh, yeah. No, I am shocked at how bad every card since 300 has been.
Yeah.
It's like they blew their wad. They were like, we're going to have a bunch of really good fights. And then it was like, what's our next pay-per-view?
Islam anything has got me. Islam Makhachev, by the way, has got me.
Yeah.
So I'm watching. I might be streaming it, but I'm watching.
I mean, I think what that fight really showed me was that, like, people make a lot of comparisons between Islam and Khabib.
Yeah.
But Khabib was just sort of, like, I don't know a better way to describe it other than built different. He never looked mortal for even a second.
I know. I think Islam is built different.
Except because Islam is built very good.
I think he's got a little bit of an ego, so I think he stands when he shouldn't. That's it. I think that's the only, like, you see Islam wrestle, it's like the same shit.
No, it's not the same shit.
I think it's
Islam's
similar.
like a lot more technical and a lot less overpowering. Islam is like, he fucking won that fight with, like, I don't even know what you describe the foot drag thing that he did on Poirier.
Didn't he darce him?
No. But like how he got him to the ground was like this foot drag thing that he converted into something else, like this very high level technical thing going on.
Just a little ankle pick.
No, not an ankle pick. Like a very weird. It was odd.
That
I've never
reminds me
seen
of
someone
Tony Ferguson walking around saying he's going to ankle pick people. That's a weird thing to say. If you don't know what an ankle pick is.
Hold on, brother. I'm talking. Hold on, brother. But yeah, like it's
anyway.
It was a fascinating technical display for him. Whereas Khabib, it was just,
smash.
I'm going to get on top of you and punch you in the face 50 times, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, there was no like technical. It was just like, I will relentlessly chase you down.
Here's what he said
exactly.
He said, I'm going to take you to deep water and drown you. You're like, oh, fuck, what the hell? Who says that?
Yeah.
That's my favorite analogy.
It's just a very different thing with Khabib and Islam. Islam is like a sort of perfect fighter.
Yeah.
He's good at everything. But Khabib was so good at the one thing that he did very well that it was just like, I never felt like anyone could ever beat him.
Yeah.
With Islam, it's like, I think he's elite, but it's like, okay, he'll age out of it.
One thing I'll say is I actually had zero hope for Dustin Poirier, but I was very surprised that the fight was even competitive.
I think takedown defense being as good as it was shocking to me.
Yeah, maybe he learned a few lessons, or like he learned some hard lessons because, Khabib sort of destroyed him. Anyway, people are like, what the fuck is this? Yeah. This is the snapshot when you miss a week. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week to talk about Marvel Snap.